Agents in general, the story of AI at 2025. And right now we're on the cusp of having agents being able to transact micropayments or full payments, set up entire stacks, software stacks by paying each other. And now to the point of consumer commerce, having agents shop for you. The classic, book my entire trip to Europe. Here's exactly what I need, the specs and my favorite, hotel and so on. The kind of vision of what it looks like when agents are working on your behalf and they've got your credit card.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Leadership Exchange. I'm so happy to be here today. My name's Tracy. You can follow me on Twitter at Lady Leet or on LinkedIn at Tracy S. Lee. Every time I say Twitter now, every time it's like a percentage further and further and further away of me not saying Twitter.
I'm holding out.
You
set of holdouts. I'm
Twitter
still there.
space. It's still a Twitter space, right? It's not an X space.
100%. And Siri's still holding out. X, formerly known as Twitter, every time a message comes through.
Well, I'm so excited to be on this podcast today with Rami. Rami is a product lead at Stripe, and we've been working together for how many years? A few years now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's one of my favorite people. I don't even get to see you that much, but you are one of my favorite people.
Stop it. You said that to all the product leads.
No, actually, it's very true. You are one of our favorite people and my favorite people. And oh my gosh, Rami, I feel like every time I talk to you, there's something new that's uncovered, and I just get so inspired by the conversations. And so today we're here to talk about, oh my God, we had this pre-podcast setup, and I'm so jazzed up about it. I feel like I should have recorded that and got all these little snippets and shorts out of that. But we were both recently at Stripe sessions.
We were.
And at Stripe sessions, there were a lot of announcements made. And I think one of them is, besides the stable coin, right? One of the things that really struck me was, in the keynote, the Collison brothers were talking about being AI first, or AI is the wave of the future and everything like that. That's kind of cool to see that happening. And you've kind of been front and center, right? Seeing that evolve in the past few years. Tell me a little bit more about that. Tell me what Stripe is doing. Tell me about this AI first approach that Stripe is doing.
Yeah, it's good fun, isn't it? It's really fun having a front row seat on the entire AI story at Stripe. Ending with John Collison, our president, vibe coding on Cursor for a few minutes on stage at the sessions, or Will Gabrick, kind of an automatic payment through an agent right there live on stage. So I guess taking you back to the how we see it evolve here. So Stripe is a kind of a layer across the internet, right, for payments, simply known as the mission to increase the internet GDP. The very first AI companies that started monetizing, and one of the unique things about AI companies, they needed to monetize out of the gate because it was costly. Each token, each call cost money. So they needed to recoup that right from the get-go, unlike some other software, which is incrementally kind of zero cost. And so we had this incredible front row seat at Stripe to see the very first inklings of what the AI startup ecosystem looks like. And so we were supporting them. Simply put, the AI startups were our customers. And so every one of the startups that are now flourishing, with be it Cursor or Windsurf or Harvey or others, and that are exploding in the ecosystem, are fundamentally AI customers. And we've seen the most incredible speed to growth, not just growth, but the speed to 100 million ARR, the speed to 10 million users. That penetration is unlike anything else. And Patrick showed some graphs on sessions at just how vertical the graph is and the speed is of this AI boom in AI startups. And Stripe being there to support them has been one of the most incredible things. In general, Stripe is an amazing place to be, to have a front row seat to the entire startup ecosystem. You essentially work in service of startups, all tech companies, anyone on the internet who's processing payments, but particularly in the latest boom of AI startups, it's been amazing to watch and have a front row seat to it. Then internally kind of being able to take those on. And the opportunity is you start seeing the tooling, you start seeing the startups themselves, and then Stripe engineers take them on themselves. They see Cursor, they see Windsurf, and they see others, and they bring them in-house, and they become the first users giving feedback back to the Cursor and Windsurf teams. And so you see this incredible
That's
internal,
so cool.
this internal experimentation that's taken off here. So kind of, fundamentally an AI first company from the get-go. all the way through to what you start seeing announcements of, our own models, our own training in AI for fraud, and the sort of benefits you're getting in terms of fraud detection and fraud prevention are really fantastic. It's reducing by 45 points in terms of fraud prevention.
Yeah.
The story of where AI kind of can go with Stripe is really fantastic, and we're starting to see now in 25 the agentic commerce story. Agents in general are the story of AI at 2025, and right now we're on the cusp of having agents being able to transact micropayments or full payments, set up entire stacks, software stacks by paying each other, and now to the point of consumer commerce, having agents shop for you. The classic, book my entire trip to Europe. Here's exactly what I need, the specs, and my favorite, hotel, and so on.
Oh my God, what is the website recommendation for that?
That's exactly right. Or the entire kind of my winter wardrobe. Here's my style. Go do this thing. The kind of vision of what it looks like when agents are working on your behalf and they've got your credit card is a really, really fascinating one.
The credit card thing kind of scares me for sure. It's like, okay, but do I want to approve these purchases but some people don't. Some people just want to set it and forget it. I mean, I would love that if somebody could just do all my grocery shopping for me, because it takes me like 1 to 2 hours to just do meal planning every week.
Yeah, I think the consumer use cases are always kind of, you're trying to appeal to more people, so everyone kind of gronks what's possible. I'm not sure they're the first ones to take off. The kind of those classic use cases tend to be the shiny ones that are presented on stage. What's unique about this AI phase, what we've seen, and why the hyper growth, and what's so special about this particular tech kind of secular shift, is it's been enterprise adoption. It's been B2B enterprise adoption of brand new technology and super rapid penetration. You've got full GTM sales teams out there selling new AI products into established enterprise, not just tech forward enterprise, but established enterprise, because everyone knows that strategy is needed here to stay competitive and reduce costs and improve productivity and so on. And so I think the big story of the last few years has been making AI work in situ in enterprise for real, and making those benefits legitimate, and justifying the price points and seeing that be very, very positive ROI. And I think that's the big story.
Yeah, I mean, so Stripe. It sounds like all the developers of Stripe at least have access to the Cursors or the Windsurfs of the world and things like that. How's the adoption been? Like, how did you guys saw this first as Windsurf and Cursor, right? Like being customers of Stripe, but then the adoption. I mean, how did that? What do you think it was like? Ground up, like engineers just saw it and just all of a sudden started using it, and that just, because so many people were excited about it because you were surrounded by it, then it just kind of penetrated the rest of the organization? Or was there pushback? Were there people that were like, is there pushback still internally on not using these tools?
Yeah, I'm not sure pushback is right. I think there was, so like any of these kind of bottom-up penetration, product-led penetration, invariably it was individuals who picked up the tools, started working with them, and then showed it to their peers. And things kind of snowball from there. I wouldn't say there's pushback so much as there is kind of a thoughtful effort on how to integrate it best and how to pick the right path, and not necessarily pick winners, but kind of work with all the tools in the various different modalities and different models that people are thinking through, and bring them across the board, not just in development, but internal tooling, internal support, across any of our internal systems, as we then start developing our external products as well. And so it's been both organic bottom up and very deliberate. Once you saw it, you saw some very top level sponsorship, bringing it through, setting up teams around it, incentivizing around it, and making sure that the outcomes are high quality, you're getting the productivity you need, you're getting the right sort of usage, and really encouraging experimentation. That's probably the biggest thing is, and you're seeing these memos coming out very publicly from many companies like Toby from Shopify and others, very explicitly telling the organization, signaling the organization that we all need to be on this, focusing here, and here are some key metrics and what you need to be doing in order to be, a modern organization. And so the encouragement and the fostering of the kind of space to be doing that, down to something as simple as creating a channel that's how I use AI, and everyone in the organization is just sharing how they do it themselves, whether it's for writing documents or drafts or for checking in Jiras or working out kind of consumer problems and things. Just a real kind of energy and environment, AI first hackathons and so on, focusing on it from the top down as giving permission to experiment and to push these through. And then you're seeing that kind of coalesce into real like established processes and new tooling and very, very powerful internal systems to make this work. It's an amazing thing to watch.
Yeah. I feel like that's such a, God, sometimes I feel like that's such a Silicon Valley thing too, right? It's like you see it first, you get access to it first because, one founder knows another founder or whatever it is, or your friend is starting a startup. So you just have all these opportunities to just kind of, be so far ahead of the curve, in my opinion. Whereas I feel like a lot of companies are still struggling. And, we see this within teams, right? They're still struggling with like, okay, I did a POC. Okay. Us doing it by ourselves, it didn't work. This POC kind of failed, right? Like, or what's the bigger story, or like, how do you operationalize this? There's so many different pieces that people are still trying to figure out. But I guess you guys just have a few years on everybody, right? Like you guys just saw it first and so you're just like a little bit further ahead.
I think so, but I'm not sure anyone's got it absolutely figured out. To be very, very clear, I don't think anyone's got it figured out. I think we're seeing potential. I think folks are organizing around it. I think you're seeing some green paths of where it can go. But, the non-determinism nature of it, the explicit human intervention, what the process should actually workflow should really look like. No one's at stage of saying this is the way it's got to be done, but you're starting to feel the productivity benefits. You're starting to really see folks use it as routine. 50% of check-ins are based on some AI supported tool. You're starting to see those patterns emerging. I don't think anyone's concluded whether it's fundamentally changed the nature of the workforce or anything like that. We're certainly not making any claims to that end. But being part of the network up front is, to your kind of meta point here about being part of seeing it early and being part of the network, I think that's very true.
Yes.
Be it Bay Area or just tech in general, being part of the kind of the AI story has meant, this virtuous feed forward loop where everyone's experimenting, encouraging each other, almost to the point of hyperbole and kind of talking, remember 3 years ago, AGI was the story. Now it's how can we automate all product development? Not quite AGI. You had a bit of a shift into something much more pragmatic, nicely. But the feedback systems in the net are going to get rid of all product managers because engineers can make all products, and away you go. I think this is always going to be some level of thread, and for sure the nature of product management, or what we call that discipline, is going to evolve, and it has evolved so much over the years and will continue to do so in accordance with whatever the domain, whatever the product is, whatever tools, whatever technology is available. I think as long as there are humans in the loop, as long as you're an organization of more than one, then the discipline is required, because it's essentially a people-based coordination effort, cutting through the noise, communication, clarification, and so on. But the concept of product-led or product being in product is not just relegated to product managers. I think that's probably one of the biggest distinct things to clear up. Is there's the product thinking, product-led, and product-forward organizations, and then there's product management as a role, and those are two very different things. Stripe is a heavy engineering organization, very technology-forward, incredible engineering chops, and fundamentally engineering-led, but has the most product customer-centric driven processes and people that are independent of product managers. The engineers themselves are strategy first, product centered, very customer centric. And that actually is amazing from a product manager point of view. You kind of can elevate and focus on other things when you're not having to work on, the details of explicitly, here's the list of customer feedback, and everyone's been in the loop on the customer feedback, and we don't have to kind of communicate the basics. You can elevate and think high level strategy, longer term view. Product centric thinking and product forward organizations will always rule, because it fundamentally means you're thinking about the customer, the need, and how to get more value out as soon as possible. And then whoever does that product thinking I don't mind. I'm a former engineer. I used to design silicon chips, assemble in code and assembly, and then as an assistant engineer for medical devices. It doesn't matter who you are as long as that's that kind of mentality and you're delivering value. I think there's clearly entire domains that have to be engineering first and technology first. If you're on the cutting edge of technology, the idea is to uncover new technology by accident or very deliberately, and then work backwards and see where that technology can fit. And you see that all the time. In fact, the models themselves weren't thought of as the application first. The LLMs were, how far can we go in this direction? What can they do? What can diffusion models actually do? And now, many years later, you're starting to see the product thinking around how can we deliver these? What is a useful product? What is a net positive kind of return on this sort of investment for anyone who deploys these products? So yeah, I don't think it's religion one way or the other, but it's good to separate the people from the process.
Yes. I mean, I think that's such an interesting way to think about it. I mean, I think when we saw, I think one of the biggest changes in the past few years, right? When you just think about product led or product focus is engineers who just, we've seen the layoffs, right? I mean, I feel like the layoffs are still happening. I mean, yeah, actually Microsoft, last week, right? Announced layoffs, or 2 weeks ago announced layoffs. I think what we're seeing though is engineers and anybody within organizations can't just be doing their jobs. Like, you can't just be there and do your job or, do your task. Like, you have to think about the customer. You have to think about the business value. You have to think about how this is affecting your product, what your role is, whatever, because if you don't, you're not working within the organization, right? And that's those are the engineers and I think the people within orgs that are being cut right now, if they're not focused on creating business value.
Yeah, I'm not sure how deliberate some of the cuts are for what it's worth.
Oh yeah,
true.
Very
some
true.
of it seems like random stuff, but I fully agree that going forward, certainly, the more integrated you are into the organization, you understand the purpose and the why, and you're able to create kind of towards that. You're aligned fundamentally, and you're building towards it, and agnostic to boundaries of roles, responsibilities, and so on. I think they're the best. They're the 10x engineers, the 10x product managers, designers. They're the best people in general, the people who are working towards the ends and kind of low ego and low regard for boundaries. I think is a great way to be personally. I've always thought. I think the crossover between disciplines is inevitable between the classic trifecta between PM, engineering, and design. And that wheel kind of keeps spinning depending on the domain, the technology, and the time and space. So, if you're a product manager and you're not vibe coding a working prototype of what you're thinking using the sticker sheets in Figma and the kind of design systems that you already have, and that's your effective functional PRD, that's where most folks are going, and that's where we are right now. You're not sitting there crafting a 15-page PRD. You should never have been crafting a 15-page PRD in isolation and handing it over the fence, but you're certainly not doing that anymore. We're world past that. Similarly, if you're an engineer without kind of the insight of the why and what's the customer need and where's this pointing, we're not just doing this for its own sake. We're not just building building the field and let them come. I think that's a key part of the story here as well, because you now have no excuse. You have full access to customer data between things like Granola, where you've got full meeting automation, recording, customer insight being brought through. Everyone should have full transparent information about where the business is, what the customer wants, what's working with the product and isn't. And so how you align yourself and how you organize yourselves kind of beyond these man-made, artificial boundaries of disciplines and so on, is a really good question going forward. And, ultimately the best organization is the organization of one. Everything else is a mess. Everything else is a hassle. It requires coordination and people and thinking and egos and levels and so on. And I think we're seeing some really good kind of reversions to flattening, so not so much hierarchy, and part of the rifts have certainly been getting rid of the middle layers. Everyone should be doing some IC work. Everyone should always have been doing some IC work. You shouldn't be focused just purely on management and so on. I think we're seeing those trends happening in tech, which is great.
The people to coordinate, the people to coordinate, the people to coordinate.
That stuff was always a bit retro, and I think it was a great sign of bloat, and that stuff I think is good that's moved on. At the same time, you're starting to see this kind of messaging around $1 trillion one person organizations. I don't know what that means going forward. I don't know how realistic it is. I don't know how much it is kind of a bit of spin to get certain ecosystems pushed. But that certainly fills you with some level of dread, some low level anxiety around what is the future of work and what does that mean for me and how update should I be and how
Yes.
many roles they're going to be in the future and so on.
I know. I think, I was talking to one company who has a similar product to like Bolt, let's say, or some of these other companies, some of these other products like V0. And they were saying that, um, you know, so V0 or Bolt, right? It just allows you to very easily prototype something, right? So product managers can take that into their own hands and they can just build what they need, to be honest, like to a certain point, and then and then off they go. And it was interesting because when I was talking to him, they had kind of two personas that they were selling to. They were selling to engineering teams, like this is going to help you fast track, get on, green. You don't start from full greenfield anymore. Where like you can just use this product to get you up to speed, et cetera. And then also the other persona was targeting folks in product and
design.
But at some point in time, in a year, in 2 years, whatever it is, the tools are going to be to the point where you might not need an engineer. So like, what are your thoughts on that? Like,
I have a lot of thoughts. I think that's maybe true, like with a lot of caveats and a lot of restrictions, that may be true in a certain context, in certain domains, etc. If you want to recreate a to-do list app, you probably don't need an engineer to do that today. If you want to create a mortgage rate calculator, if you want to create a really simple, I don't know, hotels like GUI, you probably don't need an engineer to get that going. That's not the same thing as you won't need engineers going forward. What that tells you is there are 1,000,001 of those apps already out there. The training data on how to code those types of apps and games, why you see Snake and Super Mario, etc. coded, because there are those code bases out there that have been trained on, and AI knows what they look like. They know what a to-do list app needs to look like, and they can extrapolate and kind of. And I'm not saying everything's just prediction, but the system has been trained on what is known with some novelty potential. But you always need engineers, scientists, core discovery on the next thing. If you're just building your product if you're just building your entire product in based AI driven development, then I'm not sure you're on the cutting edge of building the next organization necessarily. Getting a prototype going, that's perfect. Getting UI going, getting functional UI going, that's amazing. Hooking it up all the way through Replit, V0, they have an incredible kind of full stack setup. That's not the same thing as you're never not going to need an engineer. I think the engineers will focus on the more deep, profound work.
Yeah,
they'll work on like fundamental infrastructure, real innovation, new frameworks, new technologies, and so on, which is exactly where you want them, not just copy pasting the same stuff over and over again. You got to the point where development was copy pasting.
Yeah.
And maybe the kind of insight here, and maybe what this
Writing
has all made us kind of realize is
documentation,
that
doing testing, everything that nobody, like some people love, but nobody really loves, all of a sudden is automated away. So it's better, and it's better, and also we didn't have to do it anyways.
Just focus on the add value stuff. It's all a man-made construct. We're all on some technology arc of discovery. Coding, computers, all invented, and we think it's uncovering kind of a fundamental, truth, but it's all an invention, and we're on some arc of that invention. And so, this is just telling us that the previous version of that, where we were in the previous step, seemed a bit naff. It seemed a bit manual, a bit archaic, and we're now kind of one abstraction level up. It has absolute kind of automation to do certain things, and definitely from a product or a design point of view, where you wanted to get to prototypes, and there were lots of prototyping tools, you can get to that faster, better, and you should be doing that. I'm not sure they're going to be checking in code anytime soon in large organizations. I certainly I hope we're not using some of the tools for product managers to check in front-end code to like our core base that's going to millions of users just yet. But for certain parts of the code base, for certain flows, for certain systems, the engineering teams are working very hard on making that easier and better. Bug fixes, tracking down, kind of easy backlogs. So there's lots of areas of low-hanging fruit.
Everything is just almost there, like, gosh, I remember, I don't know if you remember I'm sure you remember the transition from like, what was it called? A MapQuest, right? From MapQuest to, okay, I'm printing out all these different then I need a printer. I'm printing out all these documents,
printout.
right?
Yeah.
Right. I don't have a smartphone yet. Okay. Now all of a sudden I can, and maybe this was just the Bay Area, but like you could text Google where you want to go from where you are.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, and then like you'll get text message directions, right?
Yeah.
Which was, and then all of a sudden I'm like walking around New York and my sister has this iPhone and, she knows everything, where everything is and whatever. I'm like, what is
Brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah. Right.
It's brilliant.
But I think it's the same thing. Like you were talking, before this call, you were talking about this idea of, somebody making a bunch of photocopies, right? Or assembling documents and this and that. And, so much of that, right? Like we think about faxes. Okay. It was one person's job to like fax things here and there, whatever. And, the healthcare still uses the fax a lot. Right. But like, oh, now all of a sudden you can just email fax somebody. Right. And that method, but it's like, I think we forget.
When you were in the Industrial Revolution, you saw that happening, or the printing press, or computing and so on. Maybe there was longer, and so you couldn't quite see it as easily. You kind of the frog got boiled, but there's no question we're on some arc here of reducing the menial work, or reducing some manual repetitive work for sure, and moving up the value chain. Maybe it's so fast and so compressed that it has more of a disruptive effect on labor and resource allocation. I don't know, but from a productivity point of view, and I'm a techno-optimist, and I got into engineering and technology because I believe productivity is the way of the economic future. It's not just about digging things out of the ground. It's fundamentally about becoming more productive. And so I sincerely believe that this is going to be a productivity boost, and we've seen a flatline notionally from technology over the last little while. So this is, I think this is going to be the thing that delivers on the promise of the last few years of what the technology can do for everyone. I probably a little worried that it's disruptive. It'll happen so compoundedly and so quickly, and maybe people overshoot because they think they've already got.
It's like the
fixed.
gold rush, right? It's like the it's like it's interesting because I think it will be like what was the company? It was Klarna. So there was an article recently. Did
Customer
you see
support.
that?
They pulled it back. Yeah.
Yeah. So when did they like let go of 700 people and said AI is going to do it all? Is that right?
So Klarna's story is amazing because basically in February last year, 2024, they announced, for the first time, they said, we've got automated customer support that's doing the work of something like 2,000 people and saving us X $100 million a year. This is the way forward. And so there's this absolute rush. Sierra, Decagon, and others, AI first customer support. Intercom was a bit late to the game. They got there with Finn, doing AI first customer support because of it. So Klarna was heralded as AI first. Look at the productivity boost. This is very, very clear. And people were using that piece of paper and that stat and going around and selling into enterprises. Fast forward exactly a year, maybe plus or minus a month, Klarna's come out and said, we've overshot. We got rid of too many people.
Did they actually say that though?
They said, we've overshot. We've
I
got
love that.
Too many people and the quality's gone down and we need to really focus on getting quality back up. And so they're a really good example. Maybe they are on the leading edge here, and the harbinger of what's to come is that people will overshoot and get rid of folks and think everything's automated and assume kind of simply that things are fixed, and then realize actually we hadn't quite looked at it in detail and we need to augment in the right way. And I think any adoption curve has this kind of sinusoidal overshoot stabilizing effect. But there are some really great stories coming through. I think Harvey's the other one that's in the same in a vertical domain. They're the big legal AI one where they're focusing very heavily on getting a lot boilerplate contract, and they're in many of the top legal firms that they're selling to them. I think there's going to be some interesting stories coming out of that of what's it actually done to the work, how much reviews are required.
I can't wait because, my God, I mean, even with Stripe, right? What is the product that you can basically incorporate a Delaware C Corp for like $300 or something like
Atlas.
that?
Atlas.
Atlas. Thank you.
Winner. Stripe Atlas. Yeah.
Yes. So Stripe Atlas versus, I don't know. I mean, I guess in the Silicon Valley, right? Like you're talking about $4,000 to $5,000 just to do an incorporation, whereas like Stripe Atlas will do it for $300. Weird plug there, but I mean, it's like amazing. I mean, that's what technology is for, right? Like technology is just to enable. I wonder why Atlas came about, though. Like who was pissed off enough that they felt like they needed
if you've ever tried to do it, it's a painful experience. Unnecessarily painful.
yes.
It's classic like government bureaucratic form filling stuff.
Yes, yes.
And seeing the opportunity to modernize that with a layer of automation and increasingly AI to make it happen. It's been one of the most successful early stage startup incorporating with Stripe.
People still don't know about it though. I tell everybody, I'm like, do this versus I still remember my first startup I incorporated. I was like, I took $3,000 out of some account that my mom had set up when I was younger,
right.
And like when I hit 25, it was mine. I was like, first thing I'm doing is I'm incorporating a company. She's like, you're wasting money. It was one of the best decisions I ever made, but like,
is that right?
It would have been nice to spend $300 versus like the $3,000 that I spent at the time. But
driving costs down.
I know, Rami, I feel like we could talk forever, and I feel like we should have you back on again because you have so many good thoughts and you're making me want to move to the Bay Area. And there's a lot of other feelings associated with all of our conversations, but it's so inspiring. So I hope everybody else was inspired as well by chatting with Rami. Where can we find you online if we want to learn more about you?
Oh, sure. I'm at Mr. Rami Banna at Twitter if you want to find, and also Mr. Rami Banna at on LinkedIn. Anywhere else in between, that's MrRamiBanna.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Thank you again, everyone, for listening. And hopefully this isn't the last episode we do together.
I'd love to come back.
All right, everyone. Thanks again. Yes, same. See you all soon.